PPSIMMONS Television. My name is Mike Shoesmith, and as you guys know, we cover all sorts of topics here on PPSIMMONS on the YouTube channel and our blog and our various internet properties. But we are of the firm conviction that we all have assignments from the Lord, and our assignments are varied. But there are a great many assignments that we at the PPSIMMONS Ministry are not tapped by the Lord to do, although there are a great many equally important assignments from the Lord. And so we've managed to get a hold of a friend here, Jeremy Caverley of JMC Ministries, and he's been a great friend of ours for a brief period of time, and we've only recently associated ourselves with Jeremy. He's become a valuable contributor to the blog, and we appreciate Jeremy. Jeremy, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here. How are you doing this evening?
All right, buddy. Listen, Jeremy, you've got a very interesting story to tell people, and you've given your testimony in speeches and at I guess churches and assemblies around the country. Tell the listeners, the PPSIMMONS audience, what's your story, man? Where do you come from?
Well, I came from a small rural town in Texas, and I didn't have the greatest of life. I grew up poor all my life, and hardship happened my senior year of school, and one thing led to another with an abusive father and everything else. I was in the process of going to college to get a 4-year scholarship for a music scholarship, and the truck that we had, it broke. And I ended up homeless. There was an abusive stepfather in the situation. Mother wasn't so great. And through other situations, I became homeless. And it led me to a homeless experience that brought me closer to the Lord. In fact, through this homeless experience, I was able to minister to other homeless people, which eventually led me to going to South Africa while homeless, to minister to people that were homeless in South Africa.
Wow.
That was 12 years ago.
Well, that's amazing. South Africa, huh? You're hanging out with Richard Dawkins, maybe.
Yeah, it was so strange back then. Those that are familiar with the apartheid that happened just a few years ago, in that time period, there were still places where there were, weapons, people walking around, and squatter camps and whatnot, and the message that I had was unique compared to other people. I ended up being involved helping the younger youth. I was 19 at the time, and just God led me from a homeless shelter to South Africa. It was just an amazing feat in itself. And coming back later on, I got involved with the Salvation Army and continued to work with the homeless and doing different things that have happened in my life. But that one situation about my college degree, how so many things in my life have been taken away. The college degree, my mother, my father, my stepfather are now deceased. My grandmother's deceased, so I'm pretty much an adult orphan at this point because, people in America see themselves as an adult over the age of 18. And I started asking God, what was the next step? What did he want from me? Where did he want me to go? And there were points in that homeless experience I debated to almost join the Salvation Army. In fact, I became an inherent of the Salvation Army and almost became a Salvation Army officer there out of the Houston, Texas office. But later on, God had something even bigger for me.
I got to ask you though, this going from Texas to South Africa, can you elaborate on that? How did that trip happen?
How did that trip happen? Well, I can rewind all the way back to my freshman, sophomore year of high school. Ron Luce wrote a book called The 10 Challenges of a World Changer. At this point, a friend of mine and my grandmother, who I was living with, signed the book. And at the end of the 10 challenges that you do with yourself and your family, quiet times, Bible studies, memorizing the Word, trying to correct yourself in your life and give it completely over to Jesus Christ. There was this challenge at the end of it to contact Teen Mania and eventually go on a mission trip, eventually go to the Honor Academy they had. And I carried that book with me while I was homeless at this first shelter. And in fact, a man who will remain anonymous at this point said, "Hey, Jeremy, here I am." This is fast forward, from sophomore time to about 18, 19 years of age. "Hey, Jeremy, would you like to go to Acquire the Fire Conference? And hey, I really think God wants you to go on a mission trip and go to Honor Academy." That's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
Why I'm at a homeless shelter. What? Not after I went to a 4-year college, not going to seminary.
Yeah.
A kid, essentially, is being told to go and evangelize the lost from a homeless shelter.
You mean God? You mean God used you without a seminary degree?
Yes, that's correct.
That's not possible now, is it?
That's what you would think. That was the thing I kind of doubted. So I ran to my room and I went in my locker kind of area, and I got the book and I brought it out and I was crying. And I said, "Look at this book. My grandmother and my friend and I, we did this book," and we all just bawled our eyes out. So at this point, I started raising money in Lufkin, Texas, going out of the JMC Ministries homeless shelter there. And I raised my funds to go to South Africa. I raised my funds to go to the Honor Academy afterwards. In fact, I met Ron Lewis. He showed up on the trip in South Africa while we were there. And we went all sorts of places on that trip. We went to a hospital where there were AIDS patients and orphans. We went to an orphanage. We went to a women's prison, a highly secure women's prison. We went out to the squatter camps and all sorts of different places. And at that time, there was big floods going on. Christian persecution was going on. This is the year 2000. A lot of stuff was happening in South Africa, and the new government was just established just a few years before. And God used that. So I was there for about 3 or so weeks. We did a study of just going around sharing the message of the gospel. We did a drama called The Journeyman, and in this drama, this kid, the journeyman, he ends up killing someone, and we symbolized that by wearing red gloves. And it was a stain of sin he could not remove. And he would go to these different kinds of people of power, people of strength, people of wisdom, and none of these people could help him. But this other guy, which we called the journeyman, which was supposed to be Jesus Christ, he shows up and helps him. And at the end, we actually reenact the crucifixion. And while training for this position, I actually played the journeyman while I was at Teen Mania before all the rest of the teams came in, and it made everybody cry because they knew I really was kind of like this journeyman, because this kid was and the kid in the story was homeless, and he did things wrong, whatever. And then later on, I actually had to switch roles, and I became the guy that hit Jesus' hand and put the nail in his hand.
Wow.
And it was just so insane. And then fast forward later, I got involved with the Salvation Army doing stuff with them. But God wasn't done with me then. He was not.
Before we get to where you're at today, we're going to take a break. But you're in South Africa. You come back to the United States. Was it here that you got involved with the Salvation Army then?
It was just shortly, probably 6 months to almost a year later, I got involved with the Salvation Army, yes.
Here in the U.S.?
Here in the U.S., yes. This was all back in Texas at that point.
Right. So, okay. So now it seems like you've always had a heart for the homeless, though, right?
It was just so strange, because I remember as a kid, even back in the late 90s, because I graduated, 99, there was persecution of Christians in schools. Wow. I remember we tried to have a youth group that would expand upon the see you at the polls. So we started trying to have youth groups and everything all throughout the whole week. This is the big Bible Belt there in East Texas area. Right. So while it was popular, there was still persecution. And I'm looking back on my life now, and I'm seeing how God used me in school. God used me when I was homeless. And yeah, there's been that story of homelessness, but I've also seen there's been this story of what can God use that isn't common? What can God use that someone should be not considered, the common man, not considered someone of power and strength? And I think about the Bible verses that talk about how, God wants to use the willing and the able, and that you should be able, as Paul talks about, to boast in your weaknesses, because Christ can give you so much more than you possibly can do on your own. And in my own personal experience, I know many people can't relate, but that was the one thing I had that no one could take from me, was the power of Jesus Christ. And no matter how bad my life got, no matter how strong the adversity became upon my life, Christ was always there to help me. It was not always easy, but he always showed me a way out.
Well, listen, Jeremy, there's the music. We're going to go ahead and take this break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about, we know where you've been. Let's talk about where you are, where the Lord has brought you to today. Let's talk about what your ministry is doing right now around the world. We're so glad to have been able to partner with you, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned, everybody.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeremy Caverley, and I would like for you, yes you, to join with me on a journey to fulfill the Great Commission of Jesus Christ. Right here at JMC Ministries, we believe that Christians can and should walk together, that the body of Christ can do amazing things. Check us out online at jmclive.com. We share the gospel with our news editorial, Eternal Flame News, the JMC Bites devotional series, music, puppets, dramas, interviews, and our weekly show, JMC Live, on air Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. All this and more at jmclive.com.
And we're back, PPSIMMONS Television. I'm Mike Shoesmith, and we're here with Jeremy Caverley, CEO, founder of JMC Ministries. We've just heard, before the break, we heard where Jeremy's been in his life, and gone from homelessness to mighty warrior man of God here. He's got an amazing story. And Jeremy, where you been, buddy? We found out where you've been. We want to know the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. Talk to us.
Oh yes, the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Well, the next leg of my story was after the Salvation Army and a few decisions that I made in my life, some good, some bad. I made a choice to join the military. Now this story about joining the military, I didn't want to do that at first. I remember when people would come in school and say, hey, you want to join the military? I remember how we were required to do the ASVAB training exam in high school. And I didn't feel like this is what God wanted me to do. But I've also realized a lot of times the things you don't feel like doing are the things God calls you to do.
Yeah.
That little get out of your comfort zone moment is
man.
something God calls us all the time, whether it's praying, helping someone, getting something out of our lives. It's always something that you cannot do on your own.
Right.
And this is where you totally need this relationship with Christ. So after a few decisions, I decided to join the Coast Guard. And this was about June 2004. I ended up going to boot camp, graduated boot camp, and I signed up for a bonus to become an operations specialist. An operations specialist requires to go through a top secret investigation by the U.S. government. So my wonderful whole experience of being homeless and everything else in between, you name it, it has been reviewed and documented by FBI, CIA, Secret Service, police, sheriffs, because that's what it takes. It's like a 12 to 18 page application.
Yeah.
To get this, I got a bonus to go to California. So here I am in Houston, Texas, shipped out to Cape May, New Jersey for boot camp, came back to Texas for a little while, and then flew out to California, to Two Rock, California, which is outside of Petaluma, California. For those that are familiar, Petaluma, California at one point was one of the arm wrestling championship locations, for those that are familiar with that kind of stuff. But yeah, I ended up doing that, going to school, and I ended up choosing to stay in California. While I was in the Coast Guard, I was part of the security detail for many various different things that happened on base and off base, and working with the mayor and everything for different events. And I got stationed right outside of Petaluma in a town called Point Reyes Station. And it was the Communications Area Master Station Pacific. In fact, I did that for a few years and got out. I met my wife online, and I actually drove from California to Ohio in 2.5 days. I don't recommend many people doing that, but if you got two people who can drive a car that long, you go for it.
Oh, yeah.
Came here to Ohio, Chillicothe, Ohio. And there's kind of a synonymous thing with this situation with Chillicothe, because my family grew up in Chillicothe, and there's some other acronyms and stuff going on, family relation names and whatnot, that are here in this area. And I felt like God wanted me to come here.
It's a beautiful area. I've been to Chillicothe many times. It's beautiful there.
Oh yeah, we have the Tecumseh thing going on here, but it's kind of funny. There's a Chillicothe, Texas as well.
Oh yes, right.
You know, I was born in Athens, Texas. Well, I'm now going to Ohio University. That was one of the things I talked about. When that truck broke, what happened to this 1974 Silverado big old truck we had, you know, Suburban? A rod busted into the oil pan, and that's what ended my college experience.
Yeah.
Well, going into the military, they gave me the opportunity to get the post 9/11 GI Bill.
Right.
And after having a job and getting laid off, I made the decision to go back to college. In fact, I just decided to take it easy getting into college. At this point, we were just starting our ministry, trying to connect with people and do the different things that we could do here locally and globally. And God opened the door. I didn't get the open door yet to get involved with the marching band, but at one point, I was the co-chair and chair of the College Republicans at Ohio University, Chillicothe. God had another door for me after that. He asked me to become the vice president of Student Senate at Ohio University, Chillicothe. All this coming from a man now who used to be homeless.
Right.
This is the most unrational, uncommon, unlogical thing you could ever hear of. But God has done this for me. Why? Because God wanted to use me as an example that He can mold you. Anyone listening to this right now, He can mold you into what He wants you to be, not what you want to be.
Amen.
And when you completely surrender your life to Christ, He can do all these things.
So what's going on now? You're with JMC Ministries. You're the founder of that. Tell us, what is the driving ambition? What is the I know the goal essentially is it's a marathon rather than a sprint here, which is the same for all ministries. But what is the main assignment, you would say, from the Lord for you and for JMC Ministries? If you could narrow down the assignment that you have from the Lord with your ministry, what would you say it is?
Well, I'd have to say the phrase that we have of working together to fulfill the Great Commission. And this goes all the way back to my homeless experience, what happened in high school, and so on and so forth. People have asked me, am I a pastor? I'm not a pastor. I would consider myself more of a missionary here in America, if anything at all.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe the key factor is working together, because today, in hostile environment for Christians around the world, we need to learn to be able to work together. I know there's theologies and things we don't agree upon. I get that. But there comes a time and a place where you need to work together. So I've been working with local ministries, international ministries. Sometimes I get involved with the government. Sometimes I don't get involved with the government. It depends on what's happening. And I believe that ultimately we can not only just lead people to Christ, but also reach some various needs in people's lives. And that's what I've been able to do, is to, since I don't have this seminary background, I don't have any of that, I want to be able to prove that just the common person who wants to follow Christ can actually make a difference. If I, a former homeless person, can make a difference, why can't you?
Well, listen, you found a sympathetic home here, Jeremy. We have people on staff at PPSIMMONS who do have seminary degrees, and we value their input tremendously. But I don't have a seminary degree. I've spent about 20,000 hours studying the Bible, and I believe I have a pretty good grasp on the Bible as a whole. And I've written and published 6 books, 3 of which are Bible studies. And so you're welcome here with us, seminary degree or not. We respect your calling and your assignment from God as much as we would respect anybody. In fact, the books have been written about people who have lost their faith going to seminary. So it's not always the best place to go if you want to serve the Lord. But listen, we respect you, and our hats go off to you. And we're going to end it here. Jeremy Caverley. of CEO founder JMC Ministries. You can find him on our blog. He's a contributor to that, ppsimmons.blogspot.com, or visit jmclive, that would be jmclive.com. And thanks, Jeremy. You're a great guy, and we appreciate you having you on board with us. And God bless you, brother.
God bless you. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, there's the music. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.